What if the most innocent songs you've ever heard were hiding the darkest secrets in music history? The 1970s gave us some of the most beloved one-hit wonders of all time. But behind those catchy melodies are stories so twisted that the music industry tried to bury them forever. Tonight, we're exposing 8 forgotten classics that dominated the charts before their creators paid the ultimate price. From fake bands to violent crimes, from religious scandals to tragic obsessions, these artists didn't just fade away, they were destroyed by their own success. You think you know these songs, but by the end of this video, you'll never hear them the same way again. Number 1, Don McLean, American Pie.
Here we go! I started singing, bye, bye, Miss American Pie.
Everyone knows American Pie. You've sung along to it at weddings, graduation parties, and late-night drives when nostalgia hits hard. Don McLean's 1971 masterpiece is arguably the most famous one-hit wonder in music history. But what you don't know is the twisted story behind those seemingly innocent lyrics, and how this 8-minute epic nearly destroyed the man who created it. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Radio stations absolutely despised this song. At over 8 minutes long, it devoured entire commercial breaks and drove DJs completely insane. Program directors tried everything to get stations to play a shortened version, but fans went ballistic every time they heard the edited cut. It became musical hostage-taking on a massive scale, with listeners literally calling in death threats when stations dared to fade it out early. But the real madness started when people began obsessing over what the lyrics actually meant. McLean claimed it was about the day the music died, the 1959 plane crash that killed Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper. Sounds innocent enough, right? Wrong. Music historians spent decades decoding the track and discovered something much darker hidden in those cryptic verses. The song isn't just about a plane crash. It's McLean's brutal, unforgiving takedown of how the music industry sold its soul in the late 60s. Every character in the song represents a real person or event that McLean believed had corrupted rock and roll. The jester stealing the king's crown? That's Bob Dylan going electric and betraying folk music. The quartet practicing in the park? The Beatles, who McLean blamed for turning music into manufactured pop. Here's where it gets really twisted. The song that made McLean rich and famous also became his personal hell. After American Pie dominated charts worldwide for months, everyone expected him to follow up with another epic masterpiece. Instead, his next releases flopped spectacularly. Fans didn't want Don McLean the artist. They only wanted the guy who wrote that one song about Buddy Holly. The pressure completely broke him. McLean spent 30 years refusing to explain the song's meaning in interviews, grew to hate performing it live, and became a recluse who resented the very track that should have been his greatest triumph. The song everyone considers a celebration of music history actually destroyed its creator's relationship with music forever. And that's what makes it the perfect one-hit wonder.
Why when the jester sang for the king and queen?
It's so massive, so culturally significant, that it completely erased the human being who brought it to life. Number 2, Looking Glass, Brandy.
Say, Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a girl.
If you've ever stumbled into a karaoke bar after midnight, chances are someone was belting out this classic about a barmaid whose heart belongs to the sea. Looking Glass struck absolute gold in 1972 with this smooth, bittersweet tale that climbed all the way to number 1 and has been soundtracking heartbreak ever since. But here's what nobody talks about. This song almost never existed. The band was on the verge of breaking up, completely broke, and fighting constantly over creative direction. They'd been rejected by every major label in New York, and their lead singer Elliot Lurie was seriously considering quitting music altogether to become a lawyer. The only reason they recorded Brandy was because their producer literally locked them in the studio and refused to let them leave until they finished one more track. The inspiration behind the song is even more twisted than you'd expect. Lurie didn't write it about some romantic maritime legend like everyone assumes. He based it on his own failed relationship with a girl who worked at a bar near the docks in New Jersey. She'd constantly talk about wanting to travel the world and refused to commit to anyone because she felt trapped in her small-town life. The sea wasn't calling to some sailor lover. It represented her desperate need to escape everything, including him. What makes this story really dark is what happened to the real Brandy after the song became famous. When fans started showing up at her bar asking about the song, she completely lost it. The attention destroyed her privacy, ruined her relationship with her family, and eventually forced her to leave town entirely. Lurie later admitted he felt horrible about turning her personal struggles into entertainment. But by then, it was too late to take it back. But that wasn't even the worst part. Looking Glass couldn't handle their sudden success and imploded almost immediately. The other band members sued Lurie over songwriting credits, claiming they deserved royalties for a song they helped arrange. The legal battle dragged on for years, eating up most of their profits and destroying friendships that had lasted since high school. The song about a woman whose love was out of reach ended up destroying the very people who created it, proving that sometimes success is the cruelest prison of all. Number 3. Norman Greenbaum, Spirit in the Sky.
Going on to the spirit in the sky.
When you hear that unmistakable guitar riff and the line about going up to the spirit in the sky, you're instantly transported to 1970. Norman Greenbaum's gospel rock masterpiece became one of the most recognizable songs of the decade, hitting number 3 on the Billboard charts and selling over 2 million copies. But here's the scandal that religious communities tried to hide. This Christian anthem was written by a Jewish songwriter who'd never set foot in a church. Greenbaum wasn't trying to fool anyone, but that didn't stop the controversy from exploding. When word got out that a non-Christian had written one of the biggest gospel hits in history, religious radio stations went absolutely insane. Some banned the song entirely, while others demanded that Greenbaum convert to Christianity before they'd continue playing it. The irony was devastating. A song celebrating faith became the center of one of the most hypocritical religious scandals of the era. But the real story gets even stranger. Greenbaum admitted years later that he wrote the entire song as a calculated business decision after watching Porter Wagner's country gospel show on television. He literally said to himself, "Christian music sells, so I'll write a Christian song." He spent exactly 20 minutes crafting the lyrics, borrowing phrases from spirituals he'd heard on TV, without any genuine religious feeling whatsoever. The twisted part is that it worked too well. Spirit in the Sky became so massive that it completely typecast Greenbaum as a gospel artist, even though he had zero interest in that genre. Record labels kept pressuring him to write more Christian songs, while his Jewish family and friends felt betrayed by what they saw as him selling out his heritage for commercial success. The song's success destroyed his authenticity in both communities. Christians felt deceived when they learned about his motivations, while the Jewish community saw him as a traitor who exploited their faith for profit. Greenbaum became a man without a musical home, trapped between two worlds that no longer wanted him. He spent the rest of his career trying to escape the shadow of a song he'd written purely for money, proving that sometimes the biggest hits come with the highest price tags. Number 4. The Knack, My Sharona.
When you gonna give me some time, Sharona?
That driving guitar riff and infectious beat made My Sharona the biggest song of 1979, spending 6 weeks at number 1 and becoming the anthem of a generation. The Knack was hailed as the saviors of rock and roll, bringing back the raw energy that punk and disco had supposedly killed. But behind that catchy melody lies one of the most disturbing stories in rock history. A tale of obsession, manipulation, and the exploitation of a teenage girl that nobody wanted to talk about. Here's the part that'll make your skin crawl. Doug Fieger, the Knack's lead singer, didn't write this song about some fictional character or past relationship. He wrote it about Sharona Alperin, a 17-year-old high school student he became obsessed with after meeting her at a clothing store. Fieger was 25 years old, a grown man stalking a teenager, and he turned his inappropriate fixation into the biggest hit of the year. The situation gets even more twisted when you realize that Sharona had no idea what was happening until the song exploded on radio stations nationwide. Imagine being a teenage girl trying to live your normal life, then suddenly hearing a song with your name being played everywhere, written by some older guy you barely knew. The invasion of privacy was absolutely devastating, but the music industry celebrated it as romantic inspiration. But here's where the story takes its darkest turn. Fieger used the song's success to manipulate Sharona into a relationship she never wanted. He convinced her that since she was now famous because of him, she owed him her affection. The power dynamic was completely screwed up. A vulnerable teenager being emotionally blackmailed by a rock star who'd made her a household name without her consent. The exploitation didn't stop there. When My Sharona became a massive hit, everyone wanted to meet the real Sharona, turning her into a celebrity she never asked to be. Her privacy was completely destroyed, her high school life became impossible, and she struggled with the unwanted attention for years. Meanwhile, Fieger got rich and famous off her name and likeness, while she received nothing but harassment and unwanted fame. The most sickening part? The music industry knew exactly what had happened, but didn't care because the song was making too much money. They turned a story of predatory behavior into a feel-good rock anthem, proving that in the world of one-hit wonders, even the victims become part of the marketing machine. Number 5, Stealers Wheel, Stuck in the Middle with You.
Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. You know this song instantly. Written by Jerry Rafferty and Joe Egan in 1972, this cheeky Dylan-inspired track was supposed to be a playful jab at the music industry's absurdity. Instead, it became the soundtrack to one of cinema's most disturbing scenes and sparked a legal nightmare that destroyed everyone involved. The song was actually born out of pure frustration and spite. Rafferty and Egan were trapped in a hellish recording contract with their management company, surrounded by executives they considered complete clowns who had no understanding of real music. The lyrics weren't abstract poetry. They were a direct attack on the industry parasites who were bleeding them dry while pretending to help their careers. But here's where things get really dark. The track might have remained a forgotten relic if Quentin Tarantino hadn't resurrected it decades later for Reservoir Dogs, using it as the background music for the infamous ear-cutting torture scene. Suddenly, a song about music industry frustration became forever linked with sadistic violence. Every time someone hears that opening guitar riff now, they think about Michael Madsen dancing while mutilating a hostage. The Tarantino connection should have been a career revival, but it turned into a curse. Rafferty was horrified by how his song was being used and publicly condemned the association with graphic violence. He spent years trying to distance himself from the movie, but the damage was already done. Radio stations started treating the track differently, and live audiences would make sick references to the torture scene whenever the band performed it. The success and notoriety completely destroyed Stealers Wheel from within. Rafferty and Egan, who had been childhood friends, turned on each other in bitter legal battles over publishing rights. Their management company sued them. They sued each other, and everyone sued the record label. The fighting got so vicious that they couldn't even be in the same room together. The final tragedy came when Rafferty, broken by years of legal warfare and struggling with alcoholism, watched his former partner die without ever reconciling their friendship. The song that was supposed to mock the music industry's dysfunction ended up proving that sometimes artists become the very clowns and jokers they once ridiculed. They got stuck in the middle of their own success story, and none of them ever found a way out. Number 6, Edison Lighthouse, Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes. This upbeat pop anthem dominated charts worldwide in 1970, hitting number 1 in the UK and cracking the US top 5 with its irresistible melody and feel-good lyrics. Millions of fans bought the record, danced to it at parties, and had absolutely no idea they were being scammed by one of the music industry's most elaborate cons. Here's the shocking truth that fooled an entire generation. Edison Lighthouse wasn't actually a real band. The guy singing on the record, Tony Burrows, wasn't even a member of the group. He was a hired session vocalist who laid down the vocal track, while a completely different set of musicians, calling themselves Edison Lighthouse, lip-synced to his voice on television appearances. It was musical identity theft on a massive scale, but the deception went even deeper than anyone realized at the time. Tony Burrows was simultaneously the secret voice behind 4 different fake bands in 1970. While Edison Lighthouse was climbing the charts, he was also providing vocals for White Plains, Brotherhood of Man, and the Pipkins under different aliases. This one guy was literally dominating radio stations with multiple identities, and music fans were completely clueless. The scam finally started unraveling when sharp-eyed TV viewers noticed that all these supposedly different bands had the same mysterious lead singer, who never did interviews or seemed to have a real personality. Music journalists began investigating, and when the truth exploded into the public, it destroyed everyone's careers instantly. Fans felt completely betrayed, and Edison Lighthouse's follow-up singles flopped miserably. The real tragedy is that Tony Burrows became a pariah in the music industry for his role in the deception. He was blacklisted by major labels, couldn't get legitimate recording contracts, and spent years struggling financially, while the fake hits he'd created continued making money for everyone else. The man with the golden voice that had fooled millions found himself completely unable to use that talent under his own name. What makes this story even more twisted is that Love Grows was actually a brilliant song that didn't need any tricks or deception to succeed. But the music industry's greed and dishonesty turned what should have been a celebration of great pop music into a scandal that embarrassed everyone involved and left fans questioning whether anything they heard on the radio was real. Number 7. King Harvest, Dancing in the Moonlight.
Dancing in the moonlight, everybody's feeling.
This song sounds like pure happiness, bottled into 3 minutes of perfect summer vibes. When it hit number 13 on the Billboard charts in 1972, it became the ultimate feel-good anthem that still gets people moving at weddings and beach parties 50 years later. But the story behind this seemingly innocent track is so dark and violent that it'll forever change how you hear those carefree lyrics. Sherman Kelly, the songwriter, wasn't dancing in any moonlight when he created this masterpiece. He was recovering from one of the most brutal beatings in music history. Kelly had been vacationing in St. Thomas when a group of local thugs attacked him so viciously that he spent weeks in the hospital, barely clinging to life. His injuries were so severe that doctors weren't sure he'd ever walk normally again, let alone write music. Here's the twisted part that nobody talks about. Kelly wrote Dancing in the Moonlight while he was still bandaged and broken, lying in that hospital bed. The song wasn't inspired by joy or celebration. It was his mind's desperate attempt to escape the trauma and create something beautiful out of unimaginable pain. Every line about carefree dancing and perfect nights was written by a man who could barely move without agony. But the irony gets even darker when you learn about King Harvest themselves. The band wasn't even American when they recorded this quintessentially sunny American hit. They were broke expats hiding out in Paris, surviving on bread and wine, recording in a tiny French studio with equipment that barely worked. These guys were about as far from the carefree beach lifestyle as you could imagine. The success of the song actually made Kelly's recovery worse, not better. Every time he heard Dancing in the Moonlight on the radio, he was instantly transported back to that horrible night in St. Thomas. The track that brought joy to millions became a recurring nightmare for the man who created it. He struggled with severe PTSD for years, and the constant radio play made it impossible for him to escape his trauma. The ultimate tragedy is that King Harvest never came close to matching this success again. They were forever trapped as the Dancing in the Moonlight guys, unable to evolve or show their range as musicians. Kelly spent decades watching other people celebrate the happiest song ever written, knowing that it came from the darkest moment of his life. Sometimes the most beautiful music emerges from the ugliest circumstances, but the price of that transformation can destroy the very person who made it possible. Number 8. Mungo Jerry, In the Summertime.
In the
summertime when the weather is high. You can stretch right up and touch the sky.
Ray Dorsett's Jug Band anthem became one of 1970's biggest hits, selling over 30 million copies worldwide with its laid-back, harmless vibe. But this innocent-sounding track about lazy summer days actually contains some of the most disturbing lyrics ever to hit mainstream radio, hidden beneath a melody so catchy that nobody bothered to listen closely. The song celebrates drinking and driving, casual violence against women, and reckless behavior that would horrify modern audiences. Lines about having a drink and driving, or what happens when your woman gets smart with you, were buried under banjo picking and Ray Dorsett's cheerful delivery. It was toxic masculinity disguised as a feel-good summer anthem. Here's the kicker. Mungo Jerry wasn't even a real band. It was essentially Ray Dorsett's solo project, but he created the illusion of a group to fool record labels and radio programmers who preferred bands over solo artists. The other musicians were session players who barely knew each other, thrown together for photos and TV appearances. When the song's problematic lyrics finally got attention years later, radio stations quietly started removing it from playlists. Dorsett spent the rest of his career trying to distance himself from his own biggest hit, claiming the lyrics were meant to be ironic. But the damage was done. The song that made him famous also made him a symbol of everything wrong with 70s attitudes toward women and responsible behavior. The final irony? In the summertime, continues to pop up in movies and commercials, but always with the offensive lyrics carefully edited out or the volume lowered during the problematic parts. It's become a ghost of its former self, recognizable but sanitized, famous but fundamentally dishonest about what it actually says. And there you have it, 8 forgotten one-hit wonders from the 1970s that prove fame isn't always worth the price. From Don McLean's creative prison to Sherman Kelly's trauma-turned-triumph, from fake bands fooling millions to religious scandals that split communities, these stories reveal the dark side of an industry obsessed with manufacturing the perfect 3-minute escape. What's most chilling is how these artists paid with their sanity, their relationships, and sometimes their lives for brief moments of chart domination. The 70s wasn't just about peace, love, and good vibes. It was about a music business willing to exploit anyone and anything for a hit, leaving behind a trail of broken dreams and buried secrets. The next time you hear one of these songs playing in the background of your life, remember that behind every catchy melody lies a human story. Sometimes the most innocent-sounding tracks carry the heaviest burdens, and the artists who gave us our favorite memories often sacrificed everything to create them. Which of these forgotten tragedies shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments below. Hit that like button if this journey into music's dark past opened your eyes. And subscribe for more untold stories from the eras that shaped the sounds we still love today. Until next time, remember, not all one-hit wonders fade away quietly. Some leave scars that never heal.